Hey everyone, I'm Michelle Lopez Boggs. Welcome to Unconventional Marketers, how top entrepreneurs start small and profit big without conventional marketing. I'm here today with Steph Tuss. Steph is the CEO of the multi-million-dollar global coaching company, Life is Now Inc., helping thousands of entrepreneurs, experts, and self-employed professionals gain the confidence and find the right mindset to increase their revenue, turning their endeavors into 7- and 8-figure ventures. Prior to her work with Life is Now, Steph was a school teacher turned entrepreneur who built and sold her first business by the age of 33. She has a passion for helping others create their vision mixed with the nuts and bolts of solid business strategy. So welcome, Steph.
Thank you.
Great to have you. So let's just jump right into the questions. I'm actually curious about what your first business was. I haven't heard the story of how you sold your first business. So can you take us back to that time, how you started that, and then how you ended up as the CEO for David Nagel, Life is Now?
Okay, I will give you the Cliff's Notes version as best I can. I went into business for myself in 2007 because of a sick child. So I was teaching school and I gave birth to my first daughter, Bailey, who is now 21, which seems insane. And she was really, really sick from like day one, real not well, not thriving, all kinds of issues, not sleeping, colic. And I took her to the doctor and the doctor said, you know, either this is just how she was going to be or they would need to do invasive surgery. And I just didn't accept it. It was the first time that I actually pushed back against doctors and medical advice to think outside the box. So I did a bunch of research and found a whole bunch of, I went through infant massage, infant chiropractic, Chinese herbalists, like you name it. I went through the gamut and I stumbled upon a holistic nutritionist who worked with me, and we came to find out that all of her issues were due to food sensitivities. So it was what I was eating, and then I was nursing, and she was getting sick. And I was a teacher at the time, and I'm a teacher at heart. Like even now I teach, like I love teaching. And I thought, this is too important to not teach. Like, yes, teaching, music and math and science and English to fifth graders is a very important job and it comes with responsibility, but this affects people's lives. So while I was teaching, I went back to school in the evenings and I got my master's degree in holistic nutrition. And I started just talking about nutrition. People saw my change, people saw the change in Bailey, and they got curious. So I just kept talking about it. And then people started asking me to work with them. Like, hey, can you create me a menu plan? Hey, can you see if I have food sensitivities? And it got to the point where I was having a really hard time being a teacher and having a side business. So I made the decision to end my contract teaching and go into my business full time with just the goal of covering my teacher salary, which was not much. Let me just say that. So I did. I left teaching and I started my own business. There are no entrepreneurs in my family. I have never taken a business course at that point. I knew nothing about business. I didn't even know about incorporating solopreneur, LLC, any of that, which I learned a couple months later. And I just started continuing to talk to people. I hustled. I walked into corporations. I knocked on doors. I offered to do free talks for people. And I grew my business really quickly. And I lived in a, 57,000 population town. So it wasn't like we were in a huge, urban center. I just talked to people about what I was passionate about. I went to networking groups, and word of mouth got passed. And pretty soon I was working with some professional women's soccer players, and I was the team nutritionist for University of Chicago baseball team. And I started picking up really high profile clients, all the while working with the average person who's just not feeling well. And I wanted to build my business. So I started looking for ways to build even more. And that's when I came across David Nagel. Hired him as my business coach. And I worked with him for about 8 months on building my business, which I continued to grow. But he was noticing that I was falling out of love with it. It's one thing to teach people how to eat healthy and to establish healthy eating habits. It's another thing to figure out why they're not actually doing what they know they should be doing. So I started really getting into the mindset behind why people do or don't do things, even if they know it's in their best interest, and just fell in love. So at that point, I knew that I was falling out of love with nutrition and into love with mindset and coaching. And that's when I made the decision that I was going to sell my business. So there was a couple of people in my field that I knew, they were interested. So I sold it and contacted David and said, hey, I want to go to work for you. And I started at the bottom. I started at the very bottom and I worked my way up. And I've been with Life Is Now for 14 years now, I believe. I've been pretty much in every single role with a focus on sales. I have a strong strategy background, and a strong communications marketing background just from my own personal experience. And I just grew into the role.
Wow, that's an amazing story. So you fell out of love with the business and then you became the CEO, and now you're in love with this role. And Steph's a client of mine, so I've been working with her for a few years. So I'm part of that marketing team. Now you run a team. I see how busy you are and you're like the superhuman CEO. So let's shift over into the conversation of marketing. So as a CEO, you have weekly marketing meetings and it seems like you get input from everyone on the team. What is your definition of marketing first and foremost? What makes marketing successful and what makes it not successful?
So I really think marketing is quite simply effective communication. I think that some of the best marketers in the world know how to communicate clearly and know how to ask for what they want. So marketing is really to do two things. It's to educate and it's to inspire someone to take an action of some kind, right? So you're either educating through content or you're creating a call to action through sales. I never stop thinking about marketing. Everywhere I go, I'm looking at how people do things, what they say. I read every magazine cover, even though I don't buy magazines. I'm constantly looking for new ideas that we can reshape and make our own. And I'm a part of some pretty high level groups that allow me to have high level conversations with other people who are just as in love with marketing and who are, really doing well in their business. So I like to put myself, with like-minded people. But at the core, really marketing is just a mode of communication.
Yeah. So effective communication, educating people, and then inspiring them to take an action. I love that. And so as a consumer, what kind of marketing do you like to see in the marketplace? Like what has made you educated and inspired to take a certain action? And then you bought something and you were glad you did.
So, I'm a sucker for online shopping. So I'm just going to leave that over on the side because email marketing, I'm just a sucker for online marketing, for online shopping. But when it comes to services, what really gets me is when people give away their best stuff first. So when you're looking at someone who really does add so much value up front, it builds trust that if you do purchase something from them, there's going to be value there as well. There's nothing that I hate worse than you see an ad or you get an email that promises things and then you click and you opt in and you show up and they don't talk about anything. It's all fluff. They don't give any value. So I love high value marketing, high value content, because if you can show me that you've got really good stuff at the front end, then I know I can feel certain in my purchase that you're going to have really good stuff on the back end after I've purchased.
Yeah, 100% agree. I love that. And with David Nagel and Life Is Now, you guys are like constantly giving out free courses, free trainings. So I see you using that principle perfectly. And I was going to ask you, like, what kind of marketing has worked out really well for you? What's been most profitable versus what has been just a complete waste of time and money?
Our most profitable is content marketing. When we do free trainings, when we give away free things, honestly, our podcast I was shocked at how fast our podcast grew. When we decided to start a podcast, David just wanted to do it because he thought it would be fun. And he just let's just do it and see what happens. And I mean, we're over 2 million downloads now. I think we're at like 2.4 million downloads just in the last couple of years. And people will constantly come to us and say, I heard about you from the podcast. I heard about you from the podcast. I decided to purchase because of all the great stuff you're putting out on the podcast. We're doing the same thing on YouTube right now. So we're really focused on building our YouTube channel so that we've got both podcast platform and YouTube platform to just give. And David doesn't hold back. And when I do trainings, I don't hold back. Like, take the stuff. Like, it's all good stuff, because how you do anything is how you do everything. So I'm never a fan of that. Like, just give them a little tiny bit and hold back everything in the hope that they'll purchase. I think it's the opposite. I think you just give it, knowing that that causes them to feel confident in your ability to help them, and then they buy.
Yeah, I love that. And what about paid ads? What's your perspective on doing a paid ad? And I know that Life Is Now runs paid ads. What have you seen work in that space, and what doesn't work?
Well, it depends on how much a budget you have. If you've got a really big budget, certain things work. And if you don't have a really big budget, certain things don't work. What we've seen work right now is very simple lead magnet ads. We're finding that live webinar trainings, if you were to run an ad to a live webinar training, your cost per lead goes way up. So between $20 and $50 cost per lead on a free webinar, or free live workshop. And your show up rate's low because they're a cold audience. So it's difficult to justify that cost, especially if you don't know what the lifetime value of your client is. But with a PDF download, the goal is different. The goal isn't to get them on a live training where then you can make an offer to them. The goal is to give them some really great content that they consume right away, that then puts them on your list so you can nurture them and then market those free trainings to them when they're ready. So to us, that's way better use of our time and money. Your cost per lead is, I think our cost per leads right now on our lead magnet ads are anywhere between $3 and $5, which is very low for Facebook ads. And I know other people that are doing, and we're testing these too, is actual lead pages ads, which means the lead actually doesn't leave Facebook and go to an opt-in page. Everything is done within Facebook and delivered through Messenger and through email. So those are the two ads that we're seeing really do well right now. I do know people in the space that are running ads to free workshops, and it's working pretty well for them, just a really high cost per lead.
Gotcha. Okay. And so for someone who comes to you for coaching, and this isn't on the list of questions I sent you, but say they're starting at the bottom, so they don't have a big budget to pour into ads. How do you generally advise them on their marketing? Like, what do you tell them to focus on? Should they just create content? Should they run an ad? Like, how do you structure that for them?
So I actually wouldn't recommend paid ads for someone just starting out without a budget. I mean, I was told one time by an expert that you've got to be willing to burn through $30,000 in ad spend to get an ad really dialed in and optimized in 3 months. We found that it's actually taken longer than that for us to get our ads dialed in and optimized, and probably about the same price. So I wouldn't recommend that as a beginning strategy for someone just new to marketing. What I would recommend is any opportunity you have for exposure. So a couple of things. One, look for speaking opportunities. So anytime you can leverage someone else's audience, meaning they share an audience with you, but don't directly compete with you, an audience that you could bring value to that makes that host look good. You can do that live stages. You can do that on podcasts where you leverage someone else's podcast audience. The idea is that you want to get in front of as many of your ideal clients as possible so that you can hone your marketing message. Because when you're first starting out, it's a guess. Like, you need to test what's going to work with your ideal client, if you're even exactly clear on who your ideal client is. So I really recommend that you just take every opportunity you can to speak in front of an audience that could include your ideal client. The other thing that I recommend is joint partnerships. So at a local level, let's say you're a relationship coach, form partnerships with salon and spa owners, where you go in and do a talk on how to communicate lovingly in a relationship, where again, you're leveraging their audience, but you're not competing with them. So you're not taking money out of their pocket if you enroll someone in your program or service. So lots of fun things that you can do on a ground level, like a grassroots level, that don't cost a lot of money, that build relationships, because let's be honest, really business is built on lots and lots of relationships. And then also leveraging audiences.
Yeah. And I love what you said about you're honing your message and you're testing it, and you might not be clear on what your ideal client is at the very beginning. So with that in mind, do you recommend that people have a funnel in place before they start to do the speaking engagements and get the exposure, or does that not matter at the beginning?
I don't think it matters at the beginning. I think in the beginning, you just want to get clear on who you are, how you're speaking about what you do, and what the reaction is of your ideal client. I think that's probably the hardest thing people do at the very beginning, is because they, in their mind, see their clients' problems and solutions through their lens, and they don't enter the conversation that's going on in their ideal client's mind. Right? So that takes some honing, that takes some practice to be able to have a conversation where you're joining the conversation that's already going on in their mind. You're not actually creating a new one or adding a different one.
Okay, interesting. And I was just doing an interview with another person on this, and they made a distinction between like customers and ideal customers. So do you only work with ideal clients, or do you just have clients? And like, what's your perspective on ideal versus just clients?
Yeah, great question. So that goes back to your ideal client is not everyone that you can help, right? So your ideal client is one specific person that you're talking to through your marketing. So in my mind, I think about it like a bullseye, right? You have the red center, and then you have all the rings on the outside of the red center. So if you're speaking to that red center, if you're speaking to that one ideal client that you want to hear your message and be like, wow, that person gets me, I need to follow them. What happens is, if you're clear on who that one person is, everybody else in the outer rings that resonate with some piece of that one person will be attracted to you as well. Whereas if you have a broad message that goes out to everyone you can help, in all the different categories and all the different demographics and all the different situations, you create mass confusion. People don't know who you're talking to. So the idea is that you have your one ideal client, and that's kind of where your marketing message goes. And then everybody that resonates with that one is also attracted to you. What I see is when people first start is, I say, well, who's your ideal client? And they say, well, it's women between the ages of 34 and 75. And I'm like, that is not an ideal client. That is, 60% of the population, right? We got to narrow this down so that you have a really clear message, so that all of those people can understand who you are and who you can help.
Yeah. So be more specific, know exactly who you're serving, and then maybe turn away people that aren't that don't fit that description.
Correct. And you will attract people that don't fit the description. Like there will be people that resonate in those rings that you maybe don't want to help.
Yeah. What do you think makes for a successful piece of content?
I think it's successful if it hits the goal. So a successful piece of content, let's say it's educating someone on a specific topic, right? If you get a great open rate from your subject line, if you get people that engage or respond, if you've got a post that you post on social media in terms of marketing, if you get good engagement there, if it shows that people are being educated, then I think it meets the mark.
So you attach a specific goal to each piece of content. So it's either an open rate or a click-through rate or a sale or something, and then you base it off of, does it hit the goal?
Yeah, or just an overall goal. Like the goal of this piece is to systematically educate them over the next 3 weeks about this specific topic, so that when we come in and we invite them into a free training, they're more apt to opt in because they have the background knowledge of the what and the why, and we're going to show them the how.
Gotcha.
So it's not necessarily like it's successful if we have a great open rate, because open rates are getting harder and harder and harder to track. It's more like the whole campaign. How is it done? Yeah. How is it done? Right.
I love that. What's been the biggest challenge in marketing life is now?
I think the biggest challenge is always lead generation. It's always, how do we get in front of more people? How do we introduce David to more people? How do we get on more stages? How do we spread the news about the podcast? I think I've talked to a lot of business owners, and that's generally the big thing that comes up for them is just leads, because without leads, you don't have sales, and without sales, you don't have a business. So if I were to say that there was a challenge, we're generating leads pretty well, but if I were to say that there was room for improvement there, I would say lead generation for sure.
Okay. And once you get the leads, you're very good at converting them, right? Or does it depend on the quality of the leads?
Yes. Generally, we're very good at converting them.
Yeah. And so switching gears, are you familiar with human design, and do you follow astrology and that kind of stuff? And do you think that has an impact on someone's marketing?
So to answer the first part of the question, yes, I am familiar with human design, and yes, I'm familiar with astrology, although less so than human design. I have done a human design session, couple sessions. That's a very interesting question, because I've never thought about it in terms of marketing. How it affects me is I'm a manifester, so I can be very impatient, and I can see something and want it to happen now, but I've got to temper myself and make sure that my team is on board as well. So it impacts me in my role in terms of I need to understand who I am and how I'm showing up and how I'm communicating, but I've never really tied it to marketing. So I don't even know if I can answer that question in terms of like human design and marketing. And the interesting thing is that David and I are both manifestors.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I've brought this up to you before because I have a lot of projectors who follow me, and I'm a projector. So for us, it's interesting because we feel like it feels very uncomfortable to go out and do the kind of things that manifestors do and put ourselves out there, and it doesn't feel right. So yeah, I just always like to ask to see, because there's like different energies to different people, but yeah, that's interesting. So for someone that has that difficulty putting themselves out there, have you seen clients that are like that, and like how do you coach them through that?
So the way that I coach them through that is to help them reframe what they're doing, right? So most people have difficulty putting themselves out there when they feel bad about wanting someone from someone else. But it's the opposite when you're looking to give something to someone else. So the leading question should always be, how can I help these people, or how can I help this person? So it's easier to put yourself out there for someone else than it is for you to put yourself out there for yourself. So the reframe of, okay, I'm going to go do this workshop because I want to be in service to someone else, not because I want to get 2 new clients.
Yeah.
And then the energy like releases a little bit, and you can go into it just looking at how can I be of service?
Yeah. So focusing completely on how you can serve the other person makes it easier.
Yes.
And so last question, and then we'll shift to where people can find you. What is the mindset that someone has to make marketing work?
Oh my God, you have to be so flexible and not take anything personally. Like if I would say this is one of the conversations that I have with every single one of our private clients, and even in some of our group programs, is that when you make results and metrics mean something about you, you're going down. A result is just a result, and a metric is just a metric. So you've got to be able to be detached and step back and say, okay, that didn't go over very well. I'm not going to take it personally. I did the best that I could. So let's learn from this. What could I have done differently? What can we change? What pieces of this did work? What pieces of this didn't work? And be able to see, without any kind of emotional attachment, what you can change and shift. Because marketing is really nothing more than a series of tests. It's a series of, let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. Let's see if this works. Let's tweak this. Let's do this. Let's do this subject line. Let's try this subject line. Well, this subject line is working for, Joe Schmo in Australia. Let's see if it works here, in the United States. So I think the mindset of anyone that's in marketing is it's got to be solution-based rather than personal value based.
So be flexible, don't take anything personally, leave out your emotions. It sounds like don't have emotional meltdowns over your marketing.
No,
activity.
that is like, that's huge self-sabotage. Yeah. If your marketing doesn't perform well, it has nothing to do with who you are as a person or the value that you bring. It just means that there's something that you need to learn or something that you need to shift to get a different result.
Yeah, it's just data feedback. That's it, right? It's neutral. And I love what you say, like not putting a meaning on something where there's no meaning that needs to be put on it, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. All right, awesome. Is there any other ideas around marketing that you want to leave our listeners with?
I don't think so. I just think, I mean, based upon what I said before, I just think, not being afraid to give your best stuff.
Yeah.
Will actually cause people to be attracted to you. Give. It will come back to you.
Love that. And where can people find you if they want to work with you, get coaching, get business strategy?
So you can go to our website, which is up for refresh and rebrand at davidnagel.com. If you're really interested in learning the mindset behind why we do what we do and how we do what we do, I highly recommend the Successful Mind podcast. We're going to be going into a series on leadership and how to actually run a team, which marketing generally requires a team. So that could be super valuable. davidnagel.com or the successfulmindpodcast.com.
That's awesome. And Nagel is Neagle.
That is correct.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Steph, for sharing your wisdom and insights. I really enjoyed this interview, and I think the listeners will get some great value out of this. So thank you for being here.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
All right. All right, you guys, thanks for listening to Unconventional Marketers, and we'll see you at the next interview.